Hello and welcome again. This is episode 4, and this next episode of the Living Off the Grid in the City.
I've been keeping myself so busy,
And that's another reason why decentralization of power is so important, because people would not just think about a generator, a gas generator, as the only alternative for their power consumption. People would think outside of the box. People would think solar. People would think LP, which is a lot quieter than gas to generate power with. People would think about natural gas. People would think about wood and fire furnaces. People would think about solar heat concentrators, which is a different technology from photovoltaics. Heat concentrators are basically mirrors. Some of them curved, some of them angled to heat up a certain fluid, which in turn can be used to generate electricity or heat or both. But people would basically start thinking outside of the box. Right now, you go to the average household and you ask them what would be their primary means to generate power, were there a long-term power outage, and they would automatically answer a gas-powered generator without question. Why? Because they're not given the tools. They have not been given the tools by their power companies, by their governments, by the media, by the publications. They have not been, over the years, given the tools to think outside of the box, to come up with ideas. What about wind? What about rain? What about, if you live in the coast, tidal forces, ocean waves? People in time, they would probably start thinking outside of the box once the catastrophe, disaster, or crisis begins, or long after it begins. And that's a problem. We want to begin to think outside of the box and begin to think of solutions to problems that may occur before they materialize. That's called preventive thinking, preventive planning, preventive action. If we wait for crises, there would be so much suffering, unnecessary suffering, and it's just not worth it. People are much too happy to spend thousands of dollars, perhaps close to more than 100,000 over their lifetime in cars, in restaurant food, in fashion. People spend fortunes on these things, and they do not want to consider, for the most part, in most areas, options in innovation and energy production, and a lot of other areas like food production, food maintenance, or food storage, long-term food storage, safety, catastrophe recovery, catastrophe prevention, survival technologies such as for hurricanes, floods, tornadoes. Most people think those things are above their reach, above their interest, too far out to spend any time and effort and funds in, too remote to be pessimistic. But even being realistic, you have to consider that disaster may strike at any moment. Just recently, I was just driving by in the highway, going from one state to the next, and within seconds, this large, dark storm rolled through. Swirling clouds, low, rapidly moving clouds just enveloped me. It got dark, and it got scary real fast within seconds. And the wind started picking up really fast. It started raining almost at an angle sideways. That's how fast it was. Even though nothing came out of it, conditions like that is what produce tornadoes, produce flash floods, produce conditions that bring about catastrophes. And it could happen in the blink of an eye. Most people think it's so far remote, so far out. Some of them think that they're special for anything bad to happen to them. But reality is, it doesn't take much. It just takes a mix of the right conditions, which are all relatively abundant. The conditions are abundant. It just needs to be the right mixture. And boom, you're out of there. Strike out, just like that. It is not that remote, folks. It is not remote at all. It is actually very likely that a major natural phenomenon will occur in your neighborhood very soon. And this is not apocalypse type stuff that I'm talking about. Talk about your regular day-to-day sudden flash flood, sudden storm, hypercell, multicell, supercell thunderstorm, something of the kind that will cause major catastrophe within minutes. And they move rapidly. You will not have time to react unless you are in advance prepared. People don't like thinking about tornadoes, but they sure like thinking about the next model car they want to get, with very little question about the bottom line on that new car. How much is that payment going to be? That's all they're worried about. And how much can I put in every month towards that payment? But you try to sell them a $6,000 safe house or safe containment unit in case of a tornado here in Tornado Alley in the U.S. This is within Tornado Alley. You try to sell them a containment unit that may one day save their life and those of their loved ones. And it's a hard sell. It's an uphill battle to sell such a system to most folks out here, which is a very disturbing and saddening situation. Just to get back to my main point about decentralization of power. Decentralization of power is important because it spreads out responsibility, spreads out the task to develop technologies, which is very, very costly, and it's not worth keeping it in the hands of a few. If you spread it over millions, just imagine the speed of the improvement and the efficiency. Right now, the system is wasteful inherently. Why? Because there is very little incentive for it not to be wasteful. It's just like fast food. The meals keep getting bigger and bigger because the more they sell, the bigger their profit margins. Soda cups keep getting bigger. Why? This is not a request by the average folk. The average folk says nothing to the fast food company as far as what size soda cup they think that they should have. Those are introduced and slowly and surely accepted by most of them. The meals are getting larger, more expensive. Same thing with power consumption. Electronics appliances are not very noticeably improving in their efficiency. In my mind, they could be many times more efficient than they are today, but especially the high demand, high consumption items like washers, dryers, air conditioners, dishwashing units, water heaters, air conditioners, you name it. Air conditioners are the biggest power consumers, and they have not improved much. They have high efficiency air conditioners. They have improved slightly, but their cost is very conducive of keeping a small amount of them in the market, and they're not conducive to companies trying to make them because the technologies are so much more that they don't sell as much or nearly as much as the low efficiency units. And this is pushed on people. People want efficiency, but they don't want to pay for it. Naturally, they'd rather, just like buying a new car, 9 out of 10 people rather just pay the payments. However much they're getting ripped and abused by the total amount or the lending bank or dealership. They don't pay much mind to the total price of that car as long as their monthly payment is within their range, which is a sad situation, a sad realization. But I digress. Going back to the point of decentralization. Just to wrap it up, decentralization of power, production specifically, is important because it gets rid of the top to bottom pyramid scheme, which is very risky, especially in times of crises, economic, natural, environmental, you name it. Very, very risky. Just imagine if food production, which is very similar the way it is today, especially here in the southeast United States, food production is centralized. Imagine if there was a major catastrophe that knocked out basically food production capabilities of the major giant corporations, which, by the way, could be economic. Very likely that when anything like that happens, it will be economic in nature to where production just halts. Food production, that is. Even though the resources are there, when there's no money, no one gets paid, nothing gets done, food production stops. Then what? That's what decentralization can prevent. People have grow houses, not in the sense that most people think of when the term is mentioned, but grow houses of food. They got their backyard looking like Honduras out there with a little agricultural operation going, and they got all kinds of plants growing with fruits, vegetables, and the like. Take a walk, take a ride, and call in. Email me, contact me. Let me know how many people can you spot growing their own food, or at least a small percentage of their food, at least their vegetable, which is not hard to do, relatively. And this goes for even northern locations where greenhouses allow people to grow throughout the year, even in the winter. And hydroponic farming, hydroponic agriculture I mean, there's just no excuse unless you live like in a polar region in the Arctic circles or something. And even then, it's still a possibility. Decentralization of power production, as it is in many other areas of production. I just named food production, but it can also apply to production of anything. Manufacturing, clothing production, production of education, you name it. If you give all those powers away to a centralized entity, it's okay to give some power to centralized entities, but not absolute. Absolute power becomes absolutely corrupt. That is just virtually a law. So do not give, in any sense, power away to a central entity without you being able to at least fall back onto something else and survive and keep going. Not only survive, but keep going, keep improving. Surviving is not enough when it comes to being able to function and do the tasks that most people are expected to do, to be able to perform. Produce energy, produce food, produce goods. Take those back if you have given those away. However slowly and painstakingly it may be, begin to take those back. Begin to take, as I advocate in this show, your power production capabilities away from the power company. I have mentioned many of the more important reasons to do so. Review those, research those. I will come up with some statistics on the claims I have provided tentatively. So take those in consideration, think about them, and most importantly, act on them. This has been another presentation of Living Off the Grid in the City. Hope to get you to tune in at a later occasion, and you have yourself a great rest of your day.
Been testing myself by the worst. I've been pushing my mind to the most. I've been loving the people around me, but I'm so paranoid, yeah.